Hello and welcome to Speaking Out on Financial Abuse, stories of survival and hope after financial abuse in a marriage or romantic partnership. I'm your host, Lori G., and today I welcome the founder and president of a global institute on emotional health, and he's also a specialist and expert in the area of emotional resolution and how to bring about lasting and permanent healing from chronic emotional pain and lingering emotional issues. He is Cedric Bertelli from the Emotional Health Institute, and I'm excited to have him here. Cedric, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for having me.
I was going to say bonjour, but I got a B- in French in high school. So where in the world are you now, and where are you originally from?
So right now I am in Oakland, California, and I've been in California for about 20 years. Originally, I am from a small village in south of France called Philobazzi. It is about 3 hours north of Barcelona. And this is where I grew up.
And how was money like when you were growing up as a kid in France?
Money was tight. My mom was a house cleaner and my dad was a lumberjack. So money was tight. We had everything we needed. We had a big garden. So we mostly ate out of the garden and out of the eggs from the grandparents. So it was a very rural area. I think sometimes when you have less money, it might make it a little easier because you have other resources. You're more autonomous. You know, I grew up in a socialist country. France, when I grew up, was socialist even more than now. So for my parents, being quote unquote rich or having money was always a little suspicious. So that's how I grew up. I formed my beliefs around money, I would say.
So you went from France to the United States.
Yes, I went to culinary school because my first career was in hospitality business. So my first year of high school was a bit of a disaster for me. I didn't fit, my grade went down, so I was not happy at all. And I always had an interest for cooking. So my parents asked me if I wanted to go, well, I asked my parents actually to go to culinary school because in France, you can either way do the regular schooling system or you can learn a job as you're studying like an apprenticeship. And this is what I learned to be a chef. And then later on went to hospitality business school. And that's what gave me the opportunity to come to the US for the first time in an internship.
Everyone must want to come to your place for dinner.
I was working for the Ritz-Carlton company. So I was working for the Ritz in Half Moon Bay. And for me, taking this path of culinary school, I don't know what my life would have been if I didn't do this, obviously, but I'm grateful for that.
Well, how did this extraordinary journey begin for you that has transferred into this interest into emotional healing for others? And now you're the founder of a firm that does exactly that. Where's the beginning of all this?
The beginning started very early on. I was a very anxious child, a lot of anxieties, a lot of self-directed anger. And as I grew up as a teen and young adult, of course, you learn to navigate that. You learn to control it and to hide it. So I became very good at controlling it and hiding it. And I was being helped by substances such as alcohol. That was helping me to control things. And, working in the hospitality business, there's a lot of alcohol available all around. So I stopped cooking after a few years coming in the USA. And I went to the other side. I went to the restaurant side and I became a restaurant manager, restaurant director, bar director, banquet director. I had a large team to manage, about 250 people as I was in my late 20s. And again, from outside, I was charming and cool and funny, but inside it was a storm on a daily basis that I was managing with psychotherapy, doing some workshop, self-help development, and again, alcohol because I needed to calm down, so to speak, at the end of the day. But that was a very personal struggle. No one around me knew that. And in my mind, I always had my grandfather in mind. My grandfather passed away a couple of years ago. He was 101.
Wow.
And he was a fighter from World War II. He was a resistant. And in my mind, I always was wondering, why was I dealing with so much anxiety and fear? And how a man like him who lived through war was able to be so resilient. Him, and not only him, but all the men of his age generation in the village seemed to have a similar acquaintance with resilience. And what I was feeling wasn't quote unquote normal. I didn't have to feel that way. So trying to deal with my own stuff and trying to understand why I felt this way, but also managing a large team of people, you can see that you don't manage people, you manage their emotions. When people work for you, you have to understand where they're coming from, a little bit what's going on at home, with who they like to work, what tasks they like to do, so that they come to work and happy to work, right? You need to keep your people happy so they perform and they like to come back and be their best self. So it was this mix of being curious about how people from my grandfather's generation became so resilient. Why I had to constantly manage my emotions when nothing in my life was really a matter of danger, and also being interested in how managing a team is basically playing playing chess with emotions? How can you manage people's emotions so they can be thriving? All this led me to where I am today, I guess.
You became interested in this, but you went way beyond that. You started looking at really more science behind it because you wanted to know why you're on your own personal journey that you're on. When did you start really taking this seriously as a possible profession someday?
I started taking it seriously, I would say very early, in my early 20s. But because of the path I was in, I couldn't just quit and study. It was, working in restaurant is very busy. So I was doing things on the side. Now, in 2008, I was kind of done with this hospitality business and the market went down and we had the financial crisis. So I saw it as an opportunity and I quit my job and went back to France to study somatic therapy, the relationship of emotion through the body. Why? Because it was very clear to me that when I was in a funk or anxious, yes, my mind was running, but I was feeling tremendous amount of tension in my body. So for me, it was clear that keep on talking about my problem was not resolving them. So something different must be possible. And my grandfather, he never talked to anybody in his life. He never had workshops or Tony Robbins or psychotherapy, none of this. And still, him and his peers were able to rise through the trauma they had. So I went to France to study somatic therapy for 2 years and then came back to the US, started researching more, opening my own practice. And little by little, meeting people along the way, such as my good friend, Dr. Jacques Fumex, who is from the University of Lyon in France, developing a methodology called MRES, emotional resolution, that is based on how the brain constructs debilitating emotional pattern. And what was a big inspiration for me was the work of Lisa Feldman Barrett, who is a neuroscientist. She is right now, I think, the top worldwide of the neuroscience of emotion. And understanding through her work, as well as the work of Antonio Damasio, how the brain constructs emotion, it became quite clear on how to create MRES. We know how the brain constructs emotion. From this understanding and the understanding of the body, we came up, allow the brain to deconstruct debilitating emotional patterns. That's what MRES is, emotional resolution.
When you say deconstruct, is it you're peeling back the layers of an onion?
An emotional difficulty, when it comes back, a debilitating emotional pattern, they are all created the same way. It can be anxiety or fear. It doesn't matter. The conceptualization doesn't matter. At the root, the emotional pattern is always creating the same way. So if I have an emotion such as a specific type of anxiety that I want to resolve, this specific type of anxiety is created currently in my life by some kind of stimulus, by some kind of trigger. Something in my life triggered this specific type of anxiety. This trigger there is doing nothing else but reactivating an outdated memory in my brain, subconscious memory. So what we do with MRES is updating this memory. So whatever is a stimulus today, creating an anxiety, a fear, an anger, will now become a non-event. So it's called emotional resolution because any emotion that's stuck with us and are toxic or debilitating can actually be resolved. So repairing layers, in a way, you can say that because people approach emotion one after another. Each emotion that is isolated, identified, approached, and resolved doesn't come back.
That's such a great way of putting it, outdated memories. When you say on your site about you want to demystify emotional difficulties and emotional pain, is that what all of this is for most of us? It's outdated memories?
It is what it is for all of us, for absolutely all of us. Like if we carry a debilitating emotional pattern, it is what it is. It is an outdated prediction from the brain. And I can go a little bit in the details to explain that. So, because as you say, a big part of the Emotional Health Institute's job is to demystify, vulgarize what emotions are. We have this mystical thing about emotions, so we deny them, we judge them, we try to understand them. But in a way, it's not necessary. I can tell you very precisely how a debilitating emotional pattern is made. Few things to have in mind. Number one, the brain constantly predicts. The brain constantly predicts. This is what keeps us ahead of the game. And we can see that with food, for example. It's a simple way to understand it. Let's say you have an apple one day, like a Granny Smith apple, those green, very acidic apples. And maybe you're 5-year-old and you take a bite of it. And you have this first experience. You have the acidity, the juiciness, the crunchiness. You have a first experience. After this first experience, every time you're about to bite such apple, your brain is going to predict what sensations you're about to feel. Same thing before a cup of coffee, you can predict before having the first sip, the taste that it's going to have. The brain predicts constantly. It's one of the main roles of the brain. So we have to keep that in mind.
And that's for safety, right?
It is for safety, but also to be ahead of the game, right? If you every time you have to relearn what to do, it would be a problem. Your brain constantly predict what's happening next, so you can anticipate what's coming, so you can actually be in the action. Another funny thing about prediction, let's say you're thirsty after working out or something. You're going to take a bottle of water and drink, and at some point your thirst is going to be quenched. You know to stop drinking. Well, it takes actually over 30 minutes for your body to integrate the water that you drank. Your brain predicts exactly how much water you need to drink in order not to be thirsty anymore. 30 minutes ahead of time. So we constantly predict.
That's
amazing,
extraordinary.
Huh? The thing that we also have to keep in mind is we update prediction our entire life. We call that learning. Our entire life until we die, we update prediction. That's a normal process, except in some cases that we're going to go back now too. So that's the thing. Prediction is happening constantly from the brain. Another thing that we have to keep in mind is what you and I currently will gather as information. For example, me on the screen, my voice, everything that you gather consciously right now is about 2,000 bits of information consciously gathered by the brain, processed at the speed of about 150 miles per hour consciously. Now, subconsciously, our brain has a potential to gather 400 billion bits of information per second and to process those information at the speed of 150,000 miles per hour. So if you will, the conscious is about a marble. The subconscious is like Mount Everest.
Wow.
That's kind of the scale. Right now, you and me, we're not stressed. We're happy to be here. So the prefrontal cortex is doing something that could be assimilated as a filter. Our prefrontal cortex is filtering all the information that we don't need so we can have this conversation, basically, so we can live in society. Mm-hmm. That's because there is no stress. It's life. Mm-hmm. So we're filtering information very well. But at the side, we understand today that what is at the origin of our patterns, emotional patterns, is always the same type of event. And it is what we're going to call a traumatic event. So at the base, at the root of every single one of our debilitating pattern is always a traumatic event. Now, what is a traumatic event? A traumatic event is an instant that holds too much stress, physical or emotional, for us to take on when we experience it. That's it. It's a moment that is too stressful, either way, physically or emotionally, for us to take on when we experience it. So something is going to be experienced as a trauma very differently if you're 1 day old or 45-year-old.
Yeah.
Something is going to be experienced as a trauma very differently if you grew up in a loving, nurturing family, or if you live in a family when you're a kid with drug and screaming and alcohol and poverty. The surrounding of us growing up is going to offer us a buffer for resilience or not. So, but that's all it is. A trauma is an instant that holds too much stress for us to take on when we live it. Now, what creates the pattern is not the trauma. What creates the patterns are the instant of dissociation happening during a traumatic event. When the stress is too high, we're going to dissociate. It is a normal mechanism that allows us not to suffer too much during the traumatic event. Now, if I'm being sexually abused, let's say for 5 minutes, chances are I'm not going to dissociate only once. I'm going to dissociate several times. I'm going to go in and out, in and out, in and out. Every time I go out, so to speak, that will create potentially a debilitating emotional pattern later. Now, what is happening when I dissociate? That's where the interesting part is. When I dissociate, there is no more filter from the prefrontal cortex. So imagine a whirlpool opening outside of you, gathering an immense amount of information, 400 billion bits of information per second. So very sensorial, right? When you dissociate, the subconscious is acting like the black box of a plane. It's going to gather what you see, what you smell, the temperature, the colors, everything is going to gather all this information in a non-linear, non-logical way. And your subconscious is also going to gather what physical sensations you're feeling at that moment. The tensions in your body, the pain in the body, the emptiness in your body. All this is being sucked in, so to speak, without any type of logic in your brain during each instant of dissociation. That happens a lot in our life.
That's a great way of putting it, that your subconscious is your black box that records everything, every conversation. Is that what makes these issues chronic? Because that black box is always recording as well as what? Always playing?
It records the events. And then I would say in our daytime, when everything is okay, it is active, of course, but it's not activated. So it holds all this information and sometimes it triggers them. So I give you an example. Let's say you're in a situation in your life when your brain recognizes one or several elements that were present during an instant where you had a dissociation. Maybe a smell, a color, an overall situation. When your brain recognizes one or several elements in your current reality that were present during a specific instant of dissociation, your brain, your subconscious, is going to predict instantly what physical sensations you're about to feel. Just like for the apple earlier, remember? You're about to buy the apple, your brain predicts what physical sensations you're about to feel. You're in a situation when your brain recognizes some elements that were present during a traumatic event, your brain is going to predict instantly what physical sensations you're about to feel based on what you felt during this specific event. Now, those physical sensations are actually triggered in the body. We call that interoception. Those physical sensations that we feel are the sensations that make us realize that we feel an emotion. You know that you feel anxious, angry, sad, whatever it is, because you feel physical sensations in your body that you're going to conceptualize as an emotion based on the context. This is how an emotion is made. An emotion is nothing else but your brain anticipating that you're about to feel the physical sensation that were felt at some point in your life and generating them just like you generate the sensations when you're about to bite an apple.
And I'll tell you, no one has more chronic emotional issues than anybody who is in or has come out of a romantic partnership or marriage of domestic violence. And frankly, we kind of are in a fake it till you make it society right now in some ways. You just have to look good when you put your pictures up on Facebook. So what is square one? Somebody listening right now, what is square one? Especially someone who's just come out of, or maybe even long-term out of a relationship of domestic violence. Because I think what makes that issue unique in terms of trying to recover from chronic emotional issues is that you've often only had one other person's voice in your head. You may have been in that relationship for a long time. You don't really know what square one is because someone's been telling you what square one is. How do you start with somebody who's coming to you and they have really been traumatized by a relationship?
This is the perfect question. Square one for us with MRES is never the trauma. So square one is never what created the pattern today because the trauma happened. The years of abuse happened. The years of fear happens. So with MRS, emotional resolution, the square one is never going to be asking the clients what happened in the past because in a way, when it comes down to healing it, it's irrelevant. We cannot heal trauma. It's impossible. It looks good on books. It looks good on movies and documentaries, but you cannot heal trauma because trauma happened. If I have been for 5 years in a relationship and I've been in fear and how to stay there for whatever reason, but I was trapped there. There is nothing I can do about it because it happened. Now, what we can do, though, is to resolve the wounds that this trauma created in my life. And this is where we start at square one. The first thing I ask a client is, currently in your life, if we could resolve any emotional difficulties or any behavior currently in your life, what is it? So we take the person the way they are today, after they exit the relationship. If they're about to exit the relationship, if they're trying to find the strength to come out of the relationship. Today, what are the emotional difficulties that either way do not allow you to leave the relationship? Or since you left the relationship, what sticks with you? That's square one, the way that the person is today. We're not even going to go into the memory. We were not asked, because if you say 12 years in a relationship, at first it's going to feel whatever your partner is putting you through, at first it's going to feel like a trauma, and then it's going to feel like a habit. And that's not better. It's just the way it will be, right? The brain has to accept. If not, it can survive. So if somebody tells me, well, since I left the relationship, I cannot be in restaurants anymore. I'm going to say something silly, right? Because so many mistreated me or it made me feel like shit in restaurant among people and treated me like I was nothing. Okay, I would say, well, how does that impact your life today? Well, today, when I pass in front of a restaurant that we used to go together, I feel like so tense and disgusted. Okay, I will ask the person to take me to a moment when she felt tense and disgusted now that she's out of the relationship, today, currently in her life. I don't need to know what happened in the restaurant with her husband or vice versa, right? Or with his wife. It's irrelevant to me because for them to talk again about their trauma, this is not my job. That would be psychotherapy maybe. But for my job, for them to tell me again all the terrible experience they had, in a way, is going to solidify their experience. I trust that the experience was terrible. They suffered from them. They don't need to tell me about it anymore. This is not my job. My job is today in your life, what is the problem? I cannot enter a restaurant. I feel too tense. We're going to take this and we're going to resolve it so that this person can enter the restaurant without being overwhelmed by sensations and memories from the past. Because you see, the memories are in the body, it's subconscious. Trying to reach them consciously is like trying to speak Chinese to a French guy. It ain't going to happen.
How do you really bring people into the present when we live in a world, frankly, that it's so easy to see the past? You may not want to see that restaurant picture of you or him anymore, but it's out there on Google. It's out there here and there. It has to be a different world than just try to compartmentalize something. Once you can get them to see that I don't have tigers around me right now, what's the next step?
It will be different for everybody because we all have different personalities, history, and attachment. My role with MRES is for the person to feel the emotions that are congruent with our current reality. A lot of the emotions we feel when we come out from such a relationship that you described are not congruent with the reality. There are traces from the past that overwhelm us. Mm-hmm. So it will depend on people. But one of the first things I will do maybe is to work on the loyalty they have toward the trauma. There's a loyalty, right? Human beings are complex beings. So some people are very much, quote unquote, attached or they relate to the trauma. Mm-hmm. They live through the trauma because it has been their life for so long. There is this strange thought maybe for some of us that is, if I let go of the pain that I feel, it's a bit as if my past trauma loses its value. It's a bit like if I lose loyalty to the pain I had to endure for years. And also there's another type of loyalty, which is if I've been abused as a child, then there's like this loyalty to the child I've been abused. If today as an adult I don't feel the pain, then what does that mean for the child that suffered for many years? So we're going to work on the emotions around the attachment first. We're going to take the time. If the person doesn't feel, I don't like the word ready, but for lack of a better word, doesn't feel ready yet to let go of the pain they carry, we are going to first work on the emotions around the attachment. Mm-hmm. And what does that say about you if you don't suffer anymore today? What does that say about the person who's 12 years in a relationship? What does it say about you that you stay for so long? So we're going to re-trigger some emotions in a very specific way so that the person feel those emotions right here in the safety of the session so we can resolve them. Any emotion, my job in the session is going to be to tackle or to raise as many emotional fears as I can so that we can resolve them together. So that the person doesn't feel so, quote unquote, loyal to the trauma, that the person realizes that they don't have to carry the pain in their life today. They suffered enough. Today, they can live from the center of all the experiences without being overwhelmed by the pain they carried for many years.
Yeah. One of the unique things you say is that your aim and your mission is to permanently resolve these difficulties. Usually those tend to be more of an ongoing thing. It's to learn to live a thriving life while dealing with this. You really saw a real difference in how they ended up leading the life. We want to talk about your teaching too and how you folks are now training other people to do this as well, which is really terrific.
I know we can do it. I see it every day. And right now we're finishing a study with UCLA. We worked on a sample of 150 people, all working in high-stress hospital. So nurses, physicians, you name it. And out of those 150 people, we have 75 people working with MRES, 75 people working with a mindfulness program that is already has been tested for its efficiency. The numbers are going to be published later on this year. And you see that the numbers we have with MRES when it comes to reducing anxieties and stress are tremendous. So it's not that I feel, it's that I know. I know for a fact that this is happening in the brain, in the life of people. You said something very interesting. You say, a lot of people don't feel that they can resolve it and they talk about it and they feel like they have to manage it. But that's a myth around emotion. They don't think things can be resolved. So they approach it on a cognitive angle. And so they're going to understand and all this. It doesn't have to be this way. There's a lot of value in this work. Absolutely, 100%. But this is not what we're talking about here.
Well, it's truly comprehensive what you're doing.
Thing is, every time you control a fear, every time you control an anxiety, you're sending the message to your brain that it must be a danger out there because you have to control it. To resolve an emotional difficulties is not easy, but the concept is quite simple, actually. If you want to resolve an emotional difficulty, you have to feel the sensations happening in your body as soon as the emotion rises, as early as you can. Feel the physical sensations happening in your body, this interoceptive prediction, feel the sensations within a safe environment without trying to shut them down, because what is happening in order to update this outdated prediction prediction, you have to show your brain that at the end of the prediction, without taking any step to stop the prediction, at the end of the prediction, nothing happens to you. You're safe and sound. If the brain can experience going through the whole sensorial prediction that takes between 2 and 90 seconds, at the end of the prediction, your brain is anticipating to be hit by some kind of danger, the same as you experienced maybe 30 years ago during a dissociative event. At the end of the prediction, nothing happens. You're safe and sound. Whatever stimulus, whatever trigger used to create this emotion is integrated by your brain as a non-event. That emotion that was triggered by this stimulus will never come back.
You work also a lot with children. Tell us about how you work with children and what kind of issues do you most commonly see with kids coming to you for help?
I work with kids 8 years old or older, and right now in my practice, I mostly have teenagers when it comes to children. It varies, but I would say most of them come for fear, for anxiety. It can be about self-image. It can be about a feeling that they're isolated. If I have to bring it down to something, I would say over 80% of the kids, but also adults, to be honest, that come to see me is because they're feeling isolated. Mm-hmm. They're feeling isolated, and when we feel isolated as a human being, it's very dangerous. We feel in danger. So you can name it anxiety, you can name it fear, you can name it social awkwardness, but at the end is a fear of isolation, is a feeling of being isolated, a lack of trust toward others. It's a lack of trust. You lost trust, you feel isolated, and that creates anxiety. So that's what's at the core of what most kids come. Whatever is happening at school is happening at school. I cannot do anything about it. But if we could change anything within you that will allow you to navigate whatever is happening in your life, at home, with friends, at school, with more ease, more grace. What is it in you that you sense that is not allowing you to navigate life with ease? What's that fear? It is that blockage. It is, okay, so we're going to look at it there and we're going to resolve it so that when you're in a similar situation, you're not overwhelmed with tension. You're not reacting, but you're vigilant to what's happening. Because you're right, Laurie, you said, for example, when you come out from a toxic relationship and you lost trust, you're not going to open your heart and be trusting right away. That would be crazy. It will not be safe.
Although it happens, lots and lots.
You're right.
Because they don't address the problem.
That's right. You're absolutely right. So the idea is like, how can the person be vigilant and still calm? Because vigilance is freedom, not being overwhelmed by the past, but being vigilant, a calm vigilance as an adult, as a teenager, as a child.
And when you say vigilance, you're speaking of boundaries as well.
I speak on being vigilant, looking at things the way they are, not through the lens of my fears, but through the lens of what I experience. Sure, not overwhelmed by what I experience, looking at things, sensing things for what they are.
And you are training others now to do this too. You've opened this up not just to helping people and helping children, but you're now teaching other people how to do this. Tell us about your professional training program and how it works.
We created the Emotional Health Institute, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And we created it in the USA. We created the Emotional Health Institute in France. And we have a branch in Japan as well. And we train professionals, can be therapists, coaches, they can be HR professionals, they can be behavioral therapists. It doesn't matter. We train people how to do this work, MRES, emotional resolution, with their clients or their patients. The program is quite short. We kept it condensed and powerful, so to speak. There is not a lot of blah, blah. There is clean theory, everything is reference, and then there's a lot of practice. So people can become at ease with doing the work quickly. So it's in 4 modules. Everything is done via Zoom right now. So it's the first module is 3 days where you're going to learn to resolve debilitating emotional pattern, the conscious one. You're going to learn to intervene if somebody is feeling an emotional difficulty right here and right then, how you can, resolve the emotion felt. You will also learn to retrigger the brain very specifically, gently and respectfully to trigger an emotion during a session so you can resolve it in the safety of the session. Then module 2 is a case study based, so it's only 3 hours where we see what are the difficulties for the participants and teach them to navigate them. Then module 3, 2 days, intense 2 days. We spend 2 days together and we're going to learn how to resolve unconscious emotions. So all the shame, the guilt, all this stuff that we can find if we look for them, but the unconscious emotion, in a way, we don't like to approach them because they do not fit with who we want to be in this world. So we're going to learn to resolve that with other methodologies, so they can resolve it during a session. And certification is everything come together and you're able to basically resolve any debilitating emotional patterns with people. And of course, there are advanced class where we specialize on addiction and physical symptoms as well, psychosomatic physical symptoms.
So it doesn't matter what professional background they're coming from, you're upgrading their knowledge on this in a certified way so that they know they have gained that full knowledge of what you were teaching.
This is correct. And we're going to teach the neuroscience of emotion together with the practice. So people understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. So they feel comfortable to be in action.
Is this global?
The beauty, so to speak, of modern technology is people can join us from everywhere. So when I do a training here in California, I have people from South Africa, from the Philippines. I have people from Canada, of course, and Germany. I teach in English, so people come to my classes because they speak English. We have 2 other trainers, of course, training as well in English. We are teaching out of France as well and out of Japan. So it's pretty global.
What do you see for the next 12 months?
Thank you for asking. Within the next 12 months, we're going to have this study from UCLA published. So we're looking forward to it. The study is done. Now the lab has to write it, publish it, etc. In the next 12 months, I hope to start a new study, larger scale study on something different, maybe pelvic pain, maybe something different, or still anxiety. Within the next 12 months, my goal is to get funds because we need money for studies so we can start another study on MRES. And then speaking more globally in conferences and seminars so people know that we exist. We're very new. We started in 2019, so we need more platform. And thank you for giving us a voice here. So we need to be in conferences and etc. and keep on teaching. Another nonprofit that work with NGOs, taking care of sex and trafficking victims, also doing more volunteer work where it matters. Shelters, victim of sexual abuse, emotional abuse, etc. So more keep on doing the work on the ground, so to speak. So it's on different levels, but this is how we're going to grow.
Yeah, we could sure use a lot of your certified clients that are teaching this in the domestic violence field. A lot of these emotional conditions coming out afterwards can be very chronic, and it'd be great if there was a new path to start leading people so that they can have a fulfilling life and not keep reliving these traumatic experiences over and over again.
And we have a great community with emotional resolution, and we have people volunteering their time, their expertise to offer very low-cost sessions as well. By all means, people can go to emotionalhealthinstitute.org and reach out to us, and we're here to help.
Cedric, it's been so terrific having you on the show, but I got 2 more questions for you. One, what is your tip for someone who's currently in a relationship that's of domestic abuse and they haven't decided to leave, but they definitely need help regulating their own emotions and supporting their own mental health while they are trying to make that decision? They're already stuck.
Reach out to us. Reach out to us so we can look at together what are the fears that are trapping you in your situation and see if by resolving some of the fears, it will allow you to take some steps towards something that is better for you. And also reach out to us so we can resolve some of the blockages that you're experiencing every day because exposed to somebody else's violence or abuse, so that you're not frozen or overwhelming scared by your environment, your ecosystem.
And stay conscious of what is actually happening around you. That's a really great answer. And what is your tip for someone who is newly out of a marriage or romantic partnership of domestic abuse? They've had resources, but they're really not sure where to start to recover emotionally.
It's going to be a similar answer. Please reach out so we can help you work on all those emotions that are not easy to identify for yourself and run in the background, run your behaviors, run your fears. And then we can teach you how to do this work on yourself by yourself so you can take care of yourself as well. And I know it's going to sound a little weird, but there's also grieving things to do, right? There's a grief that needs to happen. Even if the relationship was absolutely terrible, if it was 10, 12, 15 years, there's a grief that happened. There's something, a tremendous shift happening in your life. So there's some fear that's happening when you're out of an ecosystem, even if it was a toxic ecosystem. Not knowing is scarier sometimes than being abused. So we will work on all that as well, on those emotions created by the fact that we don't know toward what we're moving on.
And I think what you're doing is fantastic because starting at the core can better your life forever, not just give you an opportunity to manage it and hope those triggers never happen again because you've got control of those triggers. They don't even exist anymore. Well, Cedric, I'm thrilled to have had you on the show, and you have been listening to Cedric Bertelli. I am going to list all his links below, and I highly recommend take a good look at what he has to offer if you are stuck in where you are emotionally and you just want to get this out of your life permanently. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Lori. I appreciate the time, and I wish you all the best.
And you've been listening to Lori G., and this is Speaking Out on Financial Abuse.